Hi there, welcome back to another Touchdesigner tutorial. Today we're going to be creating a visual that's similar to a popular artist you might have seen online. I believe his name's pronounced Nouses. Um, and we will be creating the effect with these blob tracking and line tracing outline, as well as incorporating some audio. I'm not sure if that's coming through, but it's kind of loud on my end. Which is audio generated by these blobs, as well as creating this freeze effect that we can pause each frame on, like so. Just before we get started, I'm still in my temporary setup. This should be the last video I record from it, so apologies for any sort of struggles I have with using a trackpad and just sort of trying to put this video together. Same with audio issues as well. And the style of video that we're going to be creating today is sort of like an imitation, but also just the stepping stones to understanding the style that's going on. Obviously his visual work is immaculately crafted and is much more detailed than anything we'll go into today, but hopefully this gives you some of the foundational understandings of what's going on inside a Touchdesigner to create these effects, which can maybe hopefully inspire you to create your own bodies of work. So we're going to keep this up the top as a reference file because I've sort of stitched a few different projects here together while I attempt to rebuild it. And this project file is available as it is right now for download on Patreon, just a few bucks a month, and you get access to this as well as every other file I post on there. The visual we're going to create in the tutorial will be a slightly simpler version of this, just for keeping it as beginner friendly as possible. But if you do want access to the full display sort of blobs and all that sort of stuff, feel free to hit up that tutorial down below. Sorry, hit the Patreon up below. All right, so let's start off by go ahead and getting a movie file. So if I press tab and go to my movie file in, we can get that one here. The default one is going to be a banana, but you can click this plus and scroll through a bunch of other default videos. I actually want to use the video that I had before just because I feel like it looks a lot nicer. I've used some of the default videos from Touchdesigner before in tutorials, and I feel like the finished result is just kind of ugly. So I'm going to use this one today. And the first thing we want to start off with is creating a blob track. Now, every time I use this blob track, I always need to mention that if you're using the free version of Touchdesigner, the blob tracking node is limited to just 2 squares or rectangles at a time on the screen. So if you only see 2, that is the reason why. Now, the way blob tracking works in a very simple way is that we input 2 different video sources and it attempts to track the differences between the 2. So if I, for example, connect by right-clicking here and going to a null, and then when I press this lock button, it sort of freezes the frame while this one here is still playing. Now, if I connect this freeze frame into the bottom half, and then this moving image into the top half, and I click the blue button to make it my background, you can sort of see the boxes here are displayed. Then we can, from there, use the parameters inside of the blob tracking, such as threshold. So if we turn up the threshold, it's going to detect a lot less boxes. And then we have constraints as well for setting, say, like the minimum size or the maximum size, but maybe we want to make it smaller boxes only. Maybe we want even smaller boxes. Maybe we want to allow some big boxes. It's really up to you. I'm just going to randomly select somewhere like there. Okay, cool. Now, in the one above, I've gotten the information of the blobs and then exported that out to create separately rendered rectangles. Now we're going to use that for the lines, but instead of also doing that for the rectangles, we're just going to do it for the lines today. So I need to get a few bits of information from these blobs first. So the first thing I need to do is click this, is it this one? Yes. This little drop down here. And what this gives us is a info node, which gives us all of the current info of every blob that is displayed on screen. So if I press pause, you can see there's 4 with the UV, so the position on the screen, as well as the height, active, revive, and a bunch of other useful information that we're going to use to map out some of the lines that we draw between. What's probably the next thing we want to do? So let's connect this to a null. This is good practice to sort of just make a null and call it like background. And we'll connect it in like so, and then we can have this activated the whole time. I'm trying to decide between whether we do the audio, the freezing, or the line first. I think the line, while we have done similar stuff before, is probably going to be the most useful and interesting part for people. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And to get that information, I need to get, I'm just going to separate this out a little bit so it's a little bit easier to read. And then we just need to grab just this stuff like so. Don't worry, I will do this manually, just having this here for reference. Cool. All right. So essentially what we're going to do now is you can see the way these are labeled. We have these select operators, and we want to select the U and the V, which is our position of the boxes, as well as the width and the height. So the way we do that is by pressing tab and going to our data tab, and then getting a select like so. And then we can, well, let's not copy it first. Then we want to get this data information node operator from before and drag that into the data like so. And then we just want to firstly multiply this 4 times, so 1.3 times, so we have 4 of them. Cool. All right, let's move that down. So now we want to go ahead and select the U, the V, the width, and the height. I believe that's the right order. Yep. So in the select columns, so here we go. Let's go by name, and then we type in the letter U, like so. And then we just want to repeat that for each of these steps. So by name, and then V, by name, so width, and by name, height. So now we have the information of all the live blobs separated out into these 4 different info chops. Essentially, this is going to allow us to take that information and render more visuals on the screen that matches that position data we're inputting. So whatever visual we craft based on this position information will be updated in real time with the blobs. I hope that makes sense. It's sort of trying to break down these steps is a big part of this channel's objectives. So the next thing we need to do is convert this to chops, which is pretty easy. The easiest way to do that is to right click here, go to the chop, and then we have that sort of dat2. Can now actually copy and paste that down 3 times and then drag and drop it, and then go dat, like so, dat, and then dat. Cool, so we have those lines pointing to it. And then we want the output to be channels per column, like so. I believe that is it. I'm just, first row is names, and this. And then swap around the names and the values, like so. There we go. And that should give us a representation of the values in a bar chart. You can see when it drops down to 1 blob, it's just switching over to the number, but that's not an issue. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and just copy that because we want to do that for all 3 of these. So I'm just going to copy that down again and then re-throw these ones on like so. And it should update the names here. You're welcome to rename these as well if you want, but we're not going to do that. And then for the width and the height here, we also want to convert those to tops like so. And I'm just going to double check the conversion metric that I've used down below, which is fit to square. So we just want to change the image layout to be fit to square for both of these. And I believe it's just the singular data format. Yep. Cool, cool, cool. All right, so now I can delete these because we are up to date with everything we need. And then I can go back up here and then explain sort of what we have going on. So this first geometry node here basically is rendering out the boxes. Again, we're doing a simplified technique where we're just going to use the blobs from the actual blob tracking node. So instead, what we need to do is, do we not even need, we won't even need the width and the height. I'm so sorry, actually, we don't even need the width and the height, I believe. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to use the UV position of each of the blobs to feed that to a line operator, and then draw a line that connects all of those blobs. And then we're going to try to, using the curve earlier, to sort of quantize that operation, so that way it's a much more smooth curve. Now my headset just disconnected. I'm going to double check. Okay, I think everything's still recording. Cool. Sorry about that. So the way we do that is with this sort of operation right here. So let's just copy, let's copy to here, because I think the rest after that is really straightforward. We don't even need this box like so. Also, I'm going to hide the background just so it's easier to see what I'm doing on the screen. So let's go ahead and get rid of those width and the height. If you want to attempt to create boxes, those will be... Actually, I feel like we might need it for the operations, no? Doesn't seem like we do it at all. Yeah, no, sorry. I made this blob tracking effect a while ago in a tutorial that you might have followed, and every time I return to it, I'm like, what did I do here? I completely forgot. But that's all right. So, what we need to do is let's get rid of the width and the height like so, and then we want to, we can actually drop these selects because that is just for referencing. So we want to merge the U and the V together. So we can connect in a merge chop like so. That's a math, get a merge like that, and connect it in. And then make sure it is align automatic and duplicate make unique. Basically, that's the default input. We're just putting the two different values into one. Then we have a math operator, which I don't think is doing anything in this case. If I, I think everything in the math operator is on default, but it is always a good thing to have on the hand in case we want to resample or modify any of the information or scale it accordingly. But we're going to leave that as is. And then we want to connect in a null. So all of these sitting under the chop tab. Then we want to convert from a chop to a SOP, which is our sort of 3D rendering components. So you can click the right-click the output of the null and then go chop to. Which is then going to give us this. On default, it does a TX, TY, TZ. We're actually going to be grabbing the UVs. We're not using the TX, so we're just going to have U and then V, which here you can see the lines are starting to be drawn based on the position data. And we don't need point 2 because we are just doing a 2D space. So this third point here would be referencing the z-axis, which we're not using, which has cleared everything up. If you're not familiar with programming, in programming we typically count from 0 rather than counting from 1, so the third operator or point in that point was labeled number 2 for that reason. Cool. Now we want to do a convert, which is basically going to give us this smooth operation. So we can connect in a convert. And then we want to go from our all types because it doesn't really matter what we're doing. And I've used the NURBS curve in this point, but I recommend sort of playing around with this convert as much as you want. Maybe you want to play around with some like different curve operations as well, depending on the surface style you like. Again, I was just trying to create this smooth lined nouses style thing, so I am just for today's video using that operation. And then we're pretty much ready to render this information out. So what we need to do is we need to right click here and connect to a geometry. Now, someone left a comment on a tutorial recently saying that their geometry didn't have an input tab like that. It's probably because you didn't do the step where you need to actually right click the output of the convert and then connect in the geometry. There's obviously ways you can change that by changing the inner workings of the geometry node, but we're not going to get into that today. And yeah, again, if it's not obvious, these videos are targeted at beginners. But yeah, let's get ahead and get our other rendering components. So we're going to need a camera. We won't need a lighting source today, but we will need a material. Now, up here, I've used a wireframe, but because we're doing a line, it shouldn't really matter if you use like a constant or a wireframe. For consistency's sake, I'm going to use a wireframe like that. And then we're going to go ahead and get a render. Now, I believe we don't need to do much else. Yeah, and we can just sort of see how this like renders across the image like so. So if I now go ahead and get a render from the top, I have a few different operations going on. So I need to strictly define my geometry and my camera like so. Now, I could type in the resolution of the video manually, but instead what I want to do is I'm going to go back to this original video here, and then get an info chop and drop that like so. Now, this might be a good opportunity for you to actually insert another null here. This way you can swap out the video source, so you can do like a video. Have like multiple videos, pretend that's a video, and then drag it in like so. Because if we assign this info chop to this source and then we change to a different source, then it won't actually update this node. So instead we're gonna have the second point of contact, so this null be the reference point for this info, which is awesome, gives us the resolution, the aspect, and all that sort of stuff. In this case, I'm gonna keep my network as clean as possible. So I'm going to do a select and then drag this info onto the select. So I'm keeping this together so I know what it is. And then I'm just going to go ahead and grab the res X, so resolution X, and then res Y. Beautiful. And then drag this bad boy over towards the render so we know that these two are linked. Now I can click the plus button here to drag these values onto the resolution like so. Click chop reference. And then our resolution will be updated accordingly. Awesome. And then let's go ahead and see how this looks. Awesome. So you may notice that it is a little bit too small. That is because it is not scaled to match our camera. So is this going to be camera? So if I copy this operation over, so in order to match, now this was another request someone left on, a few people had on my previous tutorial, which I think I might have skipped over, which is basically how do we match the scale to our video. And the way we do that dynamically is by using the same info chop and doing an operation here on our y-axis. So back and y-axis, sorry. Is it a y-axis or a z-axis? I'm just gonna... It is indeed y-axis, but we may need to do a look at as well. We can just drag that geometry into the look at like so. And then I believe if I put the scale in like that, and then we want to just make sure that it is referencing. So we're doing a dividing our res X by our by our res Y. So we just want to do that with these operations here. Probably the easiest way to do it actually is to drag and drop like reference like that, and then go divide, and then we can copy all of that and then change that to res Y and close off like so. Go into our camera, and we need to go to this view section here. So now that we've done the maths to align and look at the geometry correctly, we just need to make sure the projection type is orthographic, and then we change the width to bottom left because it is aligned on a 1x1 grid Can I show you here? It's so hard on the trackpad. Sorry, I can't really show you on the trackpad, but it's aligned on a 1x1 grid with the 0 point being in the bottom left rather than in the middle, and then we just set the width to be 1. And I've zoomed in to the camera, whoopsie daisies, but you can see everything is lined up as it should be. Now, if we go ahead and grab our background null, so from earlier, we'll drag it all the way over there, and then we insert before it let's do a comp. You could do an over, you could do a whatever, but doing a composite allows us to have a bit more operation. Actually, we should do an under in this case, just to keep everything easier. And then we drag the render in like so. And you can see, just barely, we have the lines in a smooth motion tracing out the fern. And in fact, I actually really like this one a lot better than my first one in terms of where the boxes are being placed. It's a lot cooler having it pick up on the slightly jittering fern movement. I played around a lot trying to isolate the background here and make it so it wouldn't detect it, but at least for a tutorial, it wasn't really worth the effort, in my opinion. Cool. All right, so a few things you might want to do to make this visual a bit more unique, or at least stand out a little bit, is we could add in, if we go to our palette and then go image filters and then grab a feedback. Now there's lots of different ways to create feedbacks in Touchdesigner. This feedback node is really easy if you want to create a very simple like fading feedback effect, but is obviously not as robust as a traditional feedback. And you can see when we connect that in to the line, we have the lines a lot more identifiable and stay for a little bit longer. I quite like that look. I'm not sure how this is looking with the YouTube compression either, but I think people might like this as well. Another thing you could maybe do is you could potentially do a luma blur. Could be a really cool effect. So let's try that. So what I'm gonna do is, actually no, I won't do a luma blur. We'll not get too touched up on the aesthetics of everything. We'll try to push on and create the sound and the locking. So we'll do the sound first because it's actually not too complicated. And I want to make sure there's not really many other effects visually going on. The main differences between these two, to quickly point them out, is you can see here we have the squares that are displacing, which is just using some UV mapping and a displace, nothing too complicated. And in order to do that, you would need to render the rectangle separately, like I was mentioning, but really that's pretty much it in terms of visual differences. But again, if you want this file, feel free to hit up the download on the Patreon below. So in order to create the sound, we're going to just use the information of the blobs to generate some audio. So from this blob tracking, I want to do another select. Now, the reason I'm doing this one is just to make it a lot cleaner. By the way, if you want to hide and show this window on the left here, on the right, sorry, you just press P. And in this case, I'm going to select the UV columns is what I'm really interested in. So I can actually just do U and then V, like so, except I need to... why doesn't that work? Maybe I want to select the names by index instead. Yeah. It looks like that's what I've done in this case. So actually what I'm going to do is connect in this one. So I've done the select rows by index, and then done from the first row. So I've just cut out the ID like so, and then set the end row to be dynamic, and then select the columns between U and then between V by name. Cool. And then we want to drag that into a DAT2, so I can connect that to a chop like so, and we have this information represented like so. Now I'm going to drag this down below everything to keep it separated. Cool. All right. So the first thing I've connected in is a math. Now the reason why, again, I've connected in this math is just to give us a bit more control, as well as we want to sort of combine all of this data, which is individual like pulses, into a singular note. So that way we can pulse in a frequency to the oscillator. I hope this makes sense, and then we can make that sound sort of represent the combination of all the blobs we're hearing at one point. So if I go ahead and go combine channels onto add, you can see it doesn't add like so. So what I mean by this is when we connect in an audio oscillator, actually I'm going to disconnect this line real quick, and I'm going to go ahead and connect this to an audio device out. Now a few things, we don't need this audio band. This is for some EQing that I did, so the way it didn't have too much high end, but we don't really need that. And then I'm going to make this very quiet because it's sometimes really loud. And then why have I got a warning? An error occurred. Oh, it's because my headphones disconnected. Oh no. Is that coming through? Oh yes, that is very much coming through. Okay, that was really quiet on my end, but I think that was really loud on your end. Basically what's happening is we're going to define a particular audio wave here, and then in this first input we have a pitch control. So the pitch of the note, so basically which note we're playing, is going to be controlled by the combination of the different blobs we pass in, like so. Now you could do a multiply, a divide. The way you represent this combination of blobs is really up to you. I found add sort of got the nice like binary blip loop effect sounding nicest. And then in terms of what wave you want to pick, it's really up to you. Like again, it's just a choice. In this case, I did exactly this, and my headphones have just connected again. Oh, my headphones are freaking out today. I basically turned the smooth pitch changes off because that was causing some chopping. I brought the bass frequency down, and I kept it as sine because I quite like sine, and then connected it in like so. And oh my god, this is gonna be so loud for you guys. I'm so sorry. Let's add another 0 here. Oh, I really hope I didn't deafen anyone. Oh, it's not working again. Okay. I think you can hear that on your end, but you can see, I think that representation audio-wise sort of gets across the data. In any sort of, at least in my opinion, when we're using data to generate sound or visual, you need to really like nail the like translation of those two pieces. And while we're taking all the unique points, we're not actually representing those in a wholly unique way. So we're not like playing a sound for every individual one. Instead, we're playing the sum of them all. We're just still using the data. But the reason why we've done that is because to get the sort of like the right audio representation in a way that sort of clicks with the human brain, we sort of take some creative liberties of connecting it together. I hope that makes sense. This is also just my opinion, and I'm kind of just yapping. But anyway, that's how we do the audio side of things. Now, I do recognize this video is probably slightly longer than intended, so we're going to quickly just finish up by creating the lock effect. So, the way the lock works is simple. What I do is I can show you. So when I play that, it plays all the different notes. But then when I freeze the blob, what happens is it freezes the blob tracking process. So the audio goes from quickly changing to holding a solid form. And that means the audio wires just also freezes and plays a singular note. So that pretty much does most of the legwork for us. It's just by freezing that operator. Now, to make it a bit more visually like identifiable, like what's happening, like we're freezing the blobs, I also switched the background from the fern to a simple black background. So what I want to do here is between the comp and the background, create a switch. Then we're going to get an RGB key, like so, and then drag the lines in and do it like this. Now, because we've overlaid the blobs onto this image, we're not going to be able to grab the boxes doing this method. There's a few different ways you could grab the boxes. You could get rid of the fern image here by combining it with the original one and doing the sort of difference between them. Or alternatively, you can render out the rectangles separately. We're going to keep it simple today and just simply switch to this when we freeze it. Yeah. Now, freezing a blob track operator is not the simplest thing in the world. I had to do a little bit of research on how to actually do this, and I'm just going to grab this all together. Whoopsie daisies. There we go, constant. So, essentially what's happening is, or what we want to happen is, we want to have a button, like so, this lock, which will trigger the freeze, like so. So the way we do that is with this little bit of code here. So if we go ahead and get a parameter execute, like so, and then we have these values that we can pass in, like value change on pulse. We don't need the built-in. And what we want to do is we want to type out, so we can click plus here, and then we can type in a little bit of code. I'm sorry if you haven't done any coding before. I'll do my best to explain this, but you might want to just pause the video and copy what I've written down. So what we're doing is we have a function, which is this def on value change. So we're defining a function called on value change, which does the following. So it locks the blob track 1. So that is this operator, but for me that is going to be instead blob track 2, but for you it's probably blob track 1. So dot lock is equal to parent dot eval, which is basically saying like, hey, when this is off it's 0, and when it's on it's 1. And so it's the same with the block. When it's off it is not locked, and when it is on it is locked. Then I've got a constant, so on the next row, constant here. Basically you want to grab a constant chop, like so. So this would be constant 7 by now, which is a little bit annoying, but like whatever. So I will just change this to constant 7. This will be a different number for you, so whichever one number it is, copy that. Dot parameter dot value in the first position. So it's basically doing like, hey, we want this one here to be also equal, and then just a simple return. So now when I click the lock, you can see this also changes. And then in order to create this lock like so, we need to do a base. So with this base that we have, we can right click and go to customize component. And then if you add a page, I've just left the name custom. And then under the page, go add parameter like so. And then I've just named it to lock like so. Again, whatever names you pick, won't matter. And then that will give us this on and off lock toggle. And then in the para execute, make sure you drag. So I've named this base. So this is what it was called, base. I've named it to lock, and then it's auto generated to lock 1 because we already had a lock. But basically just drag that base onto this OPs like this, and then whatever you named your switch, reference that in the parameter like so. Now Sorry. After all that waiting, when we click lock, you'll see it freezes this blob tracking, which is awesome. It also makes this constant go to 1. And then we can drag this constant over to where our switch is. And then if we click the plus button and then drag it over our switch and then drop it onto our index, you can see here it's going to switch to the second input, so our RGB key. Again, you can find what you can represent. Maybe, you know what, we'll do a cooler effect, but that's how it's done. But very quickly, let's just do a display stop. Let's drag in this one, and then let's do, should we do both, or should we do like this? Let's just see. Let's play around with the styling. So I'm going to hide the background, maybe make this mirror. Let's make it repeat instead. What happens if we make it 0.1, 0.1? Not really liking that look, so maybe instead let's make both of this displace like so, and then on the second input I'm going to insert a slope. That's accidentally gone to the first one, so let's swap these around real quick. Yeah, I like that. And then, whoa, didn't mean to do an annotate. It's getting a little bit messy, sorry about that. And I've also just effed up that. Cool, I like the look of that so far, but I want to make the line more prominent, so I'm going to do a composite like so. Let's get rid of that RGB key and then drag into that composite the line, and then let's try something. Should we do an ad, or should we do something a bit crazy like a Z film? Or nah, multiply we had before, didn't like the look of. Let's just keep it to, what's screen? Yeah, let's do screen. It's kind of a cool look. And now I've disabled the sound, but we have it flying around, and then we can freeze frame it. Maybe that displacement's a bit too intense. Well, actually, let's make it 1 and 1 again, and then let's get rid of that zoom. Yeah, that's quite cool. Maybe you want to add like a sort of melting effect or something, but maybe you could, like, for example, have this be dragged down slowly over time, but I quite like this effect as is, so I'm going to keep it like that for today. But yeah, that's pretty much the whole tutorial. So thank you so much for watching. Sorry, this is really all over the place. I promise my content is a lot more coherent sometimes, usually, but it is what it is. If you have watched this far, a like, a subscribe, and all that is really greatly appreciated. Also, if you have any suggestions for any sort of video, please leave a comment. Always happy to fulfill any beginner tutorials. Moving into this year, we're probably going to be doing some more advanced work. Maybe also look to do a course in Touchdesigner. But we'll see. I'm going to explore a few different options and sort of see what people respond well to. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. The file is available on the download link below. Other than that, catch you on the next one.